You hitchhiked with another parent?
Oh, so I have insurance, I suppose.
No. They had a minivan with only two of them, so.
Makes for a memorable weekend.
Making memories.
Well, like you said, it could have been worse.
Oh, yeah.
Thankful it was, all was.
Right. Takes forever for a minute when you're walking.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Any additions to the agenda this evening? Nothing. Okay.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. On to visitors to be heard. So if we have visitors this evening, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address. All right, seeing that there's none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Nate, are there anything you want to draw attention to?
Just a couple of notes, Mayor and Council on claims are having trouble with our software, closing out year end. So the claims are listed, but we don't have anything for you to sign at this meeting. You will expect those on the 127 meeting. Just a couple of extra items to point out. Mayor has reappointed Brett Winya as making a new appointment to the Planning Commission with Randy Weishidel. Advertising for seasonal employees, approving the APTG agreement for the alerts, renewing our agreement with North Dakota for EMT Paige Mueller, and advertising for the museum and band shell repair bid, all included in the consent agenda.
Any council members have comments or items to discuss?
Nice work in filling out the planning commission with those appointments. That's good progress.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call this evening. Swear.
Aye.
Welch.
Aye.
Bowers.
Aye.
And Jerome.
Aye.
Dory.
Aye.
Mauer.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. On to old business, DOC proceeds. Nate?
Mayor and Council, this is bringing this item back up from the last meeting where we had some extensive discussion on it. My recommendation hasn't changed from the December 23 meeting, recommending South Dakota Fit for the best option for our purposes. I do note two things. Alderman Swear put together an analysis that's included in your packets. I hope you can pull that up on your laptops. It's in Excel form so that you can
It downloads, so go into your downloads.
edit it. So review that if you could, but also received a proposal from Security Bank this afternoon that is included on your desks. It would be a money market account within a term of either 6 months at 4.49 or 12 months at 4.24. And upon maturity of that term, the rate will reset to 3.15 for 12 months. assume would then follow the Fed rate.
All right, discussion.
I can just comment on what I was looking at. Just trying to understand the delta between paying it off early right now and what money that would be leaving on the table at various, I mean, the big variable is what are the CD or money market rates gonna do? I did put in kind of a graph of historical 3-month CD rates from 1980 to 2023, and it's kind of all over the map. So, I mean, obviously in the early 80s it was super high. There's a period from like 2010 to 2015 where it was really nothing. I mean, it was under 0.5%. So under those different scenarios, like if it's where it is right now at 4%, 4.5%, obviously we're gonna be making more doing that than paying off our loans at 2.75 or 3% or wherever they're at. So I kind of plugged in a kind of a conservative, what if they went back to 1%? At that point, it becomes kind of a wash, or even maybe benefit. With the inflation and time value of money, you know, paying them off now would make more sense if they do drop. But being where they're at, and that it's not something that we have to pay off right now. I guess my thought is let's put it in something that we can gain 4+%, and then if and when the rates drop, then we can maybe have another conversation to pay off at that time. That's kind of where I'm thinking, but I think either option is very viable and not a bad decision. But I guess the big question for me is, I know there's some questions of exactly how we'd execute the rebate or the surcharge removal monthly, and how much hassle that's going to cause to our team, how much that would cost us. I plugged in just an arbitrary $15,000 a year. I thought that was pretty conservative, but I don't know if that's underestimating, overestimating. Looking for a little bit of feedback from you guys of like how much work and time and cost you think it would do to manage that scenario.
If they can build in a negative surcharge,
Yep.
which we think they can do,
Yep.
we don't have a solid answer on that yet. That should take very little. It's just getting it up and going.
Yep.
The initial surcharge, yeah, that'll take some time to pull together, but we can still make that work. I think 15,000 is probably on the high side.
Right.
And that would just be an initial startup cost. After that, assuming we don't change any of the surcharges,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it would simply rebate whatever is on the top line and pull it off, so.
Are you referring to do a rebate annually and continue annually, or just do an initial one like we originally talked about?
My preference would be we do the initial one and then it's automatic monthly, so it never, people don't have to even pay it out up front. They're just getting it off their bill forever.
So you'd see a line item where where the surcharge is listed, and then probably another line item where it's zeroed out, right?
Yeah, I think they're hoping on the back end, on the programming side of it, that you'll still see those, but then at the bottom it'll be,
We still have to show that we're collecting
Yeah.
it per our agreement with the state.
so you'll still see it on there, and then there'll be an additional line that's gonna show it as a
DOC
negative or a
rebate.
DOC rebate,
Yeah.
and that'll be monthly.
That way, we're still collecting the surcharge and paying the debt service to the state per our agreement. The DOC surcharge rebate is simply, it's coming from another source, we don't have to worry about violating that agreement.
That's best case, and
Yeah.
we're very confident that that's going to come to pass.
I feel good about it.
Good.
Yeah, they just have to make it happen, so.
Yeah, and I guess I put in there, the only other con of doing it that way is, you know, a turnover on council happens and, you know, they decide that we want to use this money for something else. And then that surcharge goes back on to our residents and that money gets spent elsewhere. So that's the downside I see, but I mean, I think, the risks there is manageable, I guess. I don't know. I would hope our future councils have foresight to be responsible with the city's money, but that's the risk of that scenario.
So, local banks and SD Fit, I just wanted to, Lauren, you had done some research as well, right?
Just a brief conversation with a coworker. And in his experience, and it hasn't been anything with the city of Lennox in particular, but he's worked with, like schools and such that get grants from the government or proceeds such as this from, similar projects where they need to use some of the funds, but not right away. And he just suggested that we potentially put out bids or like figure out a timeline for our project, when we're gonna need, you know, how much funds for each of these different projects that we have coming up. And then put out a request for bids, get local bids and whoever wants to put in bids, kind of similar to what security's already given us, I guess, but just to see how we can best maximize our dollars and still have access to it in the timeline that we need it, so. Cause he just felt that, you know, South Dakota Fit is a great option, but he said, you know, you could potentially leverage that and say, okay, is there a bank that can do something better for us, so.
I like the option of keeping the funds local, nothing against the state funding and the SD FIP, if there's an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I guess my only feedback is I don't want a complicated scenario. I mean, we have some turnover in our finance department and just, I don't want someone to have a burden of lots of work and lots of coordination to squeeze out an extra 1/10% or so, you know what I mean? So that's, as long as we can get to a easy solution, that's really what I'm, while trying to maximize, you know, as much as we can is a scenario that I'm looking for.
What Security State Bank has put in front of us here allows for a 4.49 return on a 6-month money market, and it appears to be liquid, that we'd be able to pull out as needed. And with a 6-month return at this rate, it outperforms South Dakota Fit quite.
Yeah, the term you're seeing there, whether you pick the 6-month or the 12-month, would be a reflection of the current CD rates. So it'd be a CD rate on a money market account for either 6 or 12 months.
Does that lock up the funds?
No, it's just the rate. It's not a CD. It's in a money market.
So
Keep it liquid.
to his point, like, we would have access to the funds without penalty if we wanted to withdraw. Do we have somebody here?
Do you want me to come up?
Yes, if you could,
Sure.
just to answer this question.
Go ahead and just state your name for our
Kyle
online
Kate.
viewers too.
Kyle Kate, your security bank. So with the money market account, you guys would have immediate access to the funds at any point in time in which you need them. So we've offered a 6-month rate, which is similar to our previous RFP that we submitted to the city, and then we offered a 12-month rate, and then upon maturity, the repricing of those dollars.
So what if after 6 months, there's better options out there than the 3.15? Is that negotiable or at that time, or is that kind of the price of doing business? We're getting this good rate up front and then we're gonna be locked in at that lower rate automatically?
I would be open to the negotiation on that. So again, going back to the RFP that we previously submitted, the 2-year money market rate that we submitted to the city was 3.15. I operated on this proposal under the assumption that you guys would select the 1-year rate based on rate projections and things going forward. So I tried to put my best foot forward without changing anything that we did in the RFP outside of offering you guys the ability to have.
It's kind of locking in, if the rates went down to 2%, we'd still get the 3.15.
Correct.
So it's giving us protection on the floor, but it's potentially limiting our upside. And then this isn't any kind of contract where we're gonna lock in for 2 years. This is just simply a good faith rate that you're offering.
Yep, just like we did with our RFP.
Last meeting, we looked at SD Fit and the daily yield was around 4%, correct? It's
4.024, I think is what it was.
Yeah, which was different from, the proposal, I think, from the week prior. It had gone down, right? We looked.
I think it was
It had
It's
gone down.
4.007 right now.
Any other questions for Kyle?
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. I just think there's a lot of value in parking it in a local bank. Not just for it being liquid and having access to it, but to support our local banks.
Yeah, I think if we're talking, like you said, 40% or whatever.
Right.
I'm good with that too.
Nate, this, with South Dakota Fit, you said, I'm looking at the site too, it's 4.007% today. If we invested all of our money today, are we locked in at that rate, or it fluctuates with?
It just
okay.
on the Fed rate.
So yeah, the benefit of this proposal is that we would be locked in at that rate for that term, that 6 months at least, or 12 if that's what we chose.
I didn't see what their rates are today on CDs because it seems at this point we're moving away from that because we want to make sure that we keep it
So we
somewhat
have
liquid.
access, yeah.
And the security proposal allows it to be liquid. That's a huge deal.
Mhm.
I think that was kind of our primary
Mm-hmm.
holdout the last meeting
Yep.
when we met. So I think that solidifies it, I guess, for me.
Do we like the 6 month or the 12 month?
With the way the rates are moving, the 12-month looks very appealing.
That's kind of what I was thinking is, well, yeah, I mean, we're not financial analysts by trade to understand exactly where we think
Speak
the,
for yourself.
where we think the rate's gonna go. I think we think it's gonna go down. How quickly and how much is, I think, up in the air. So,
Yeah, I think the 12 month would be a better option too.
'cause I mean, the fit's already lower than that.
Right.
And we expect it to probably drop more. So we at least get that 1 full year of prime interest rate, and then we can evaluate after a year whether we stick with security and they still have a competitive rate, or if it's higher or someone else is higher, we can evaluate.
Well, we put out an RFP again and figure out the
Yeah.
best move for our citizens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna do an RFP every 6 months and have that work and burden and.
Well, again, you'll have two depositories to choose from at that point. You can, of course, issue an RFP,
Mhm.
but right now you have 2 banks to choose from, and simply name another one if you need to, that's fine as well. I would note that, this is something that we'll put on our calendar for an annual review to see where we're at.
Yep.
I'm sure security will want to do the same thing as we approach our anniversary date each year, so.
So do you need a motion at this point, or do you need,
A motion would be fine.
And from an administrative side, do you guys see a downside with the local bank as opposed to South Dakota Fit?
We've got a great relationship with security, I think we know their staff well, I don't see any hurdles there.
And I think in your memo you said neither, I mean, South Dakota Fit isn't FDIC insured either, so, I mean, either way, it's the same.
Yeah, I would note though that security is willing to issue letters of credit on their securities with Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines, so that would, you guys probably explained it better than I can, but it's in essence, collateralizing those funds, so.
Security Bank has 2 options. We can issue letters of credit through the Federal Home Loan Bank to secure the city's deposits, or we can pledge part of our bond portfolio, which would be municipals, any mortgage-backed securities, things like that, to secure the city's funds in the event of bank failure. So I just submit this to the state of South Dakota on a quarterly basis and show that we are fully collateralized.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the motion has to include the rebates monthly, as long as the
No,
software
like-
supports it.
I think adequate guidance was given at the last meeting to proceed with the manual rebate for 24, and then monthly rebates on the bills to the extent possible going forward, so.
I thought the last meeting we talked about just the one rebate. Do you need a new motion to do the ongoing rebates?
I don't think it was a motion last time, it was just general
Yeah,
consensus.
just
Okay,
like talk.
yeah.
What I would probably do is once we figure this out and what that's going to be, come back with a new resolution for fees, and we'll simply have a negative fee on there for the DOC surcharge rebate.
I'll make a motion to park the DOC proceeds with Security Bank with their 12-month money market account with a 4.24 annual percentage yield. Is that it?
Second.
Did you say the term, 12?
12 months.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
And motion,
You do not.
motion carries. Excuse me. Okay, on to B, organizational structure.
Mayor and council, this is a repeat item from later last fall, I should mention. Now that we've hired our Parks and Recreation Director, we'll start on January 27, 2025. Given that particular hire, I think our best option for new structure is option 1 below in the memo. Continue to allow specific position to be responsible for upkeep of park ground facilities and to oversee the groundskeepers. Recommend a motion to approve option 1 of the organizational charts.
I just have a clarification. Is the .75 Parks and Street Maintenance Specialist the same person as the .25 Streets Maintenance Specialist?
Correct.
That's one FTE?
Correct.
Is there going to be confusion on that individual and the reporting structure and who their direct supervisor is?
No, we've talked a little bit about that already, that, essentially for the 9 months that we're operating park facilities, they'll report to the Parks and Recreation Director, the other 3 months to the street superintendent. There are times, but very limited, where we need to pull that person over to streets temporarily. Maybe it's a larger asphalt patch or, the flooding this summer, everybody was all hands on deck kind of thing.
So like
but it's
annual
very-
reporting, evals, all of that will flow under the Park and Rec Director as
They'll both
primary.
work together on it, but
Okay.
the Park and Rec Director will lead.
I just don't want that to create any.
Right. It can be tricky,
Yeah.
if you're in that position, but I think if we have clear, and Brian and I have already talked about what those delineations will be, so.
We kind of have that all the time, somewhat, right?
With a flat organization like ours, it does happen,
I just had one more question, because on the consent agenda this evening, we approved, listing for seasonal groundskeepers. And with option 1, it looks like we only need one of those, because we have the parks and street maintenance specialist, so, just to clarify, is that still fulfill our need for groundskeepers to only have one?
We think it does.
Okay.
This is our first time trying this out as a season-long thing.
Okay.
When we look at the needs of the park on average, you can probably hit it with 20. But you'll also have the specialist working on those items as well, so.
So that was kind of, you brought up a good point, Lauren, with the recreation assistants, can they do a dual role? Like if there's not as much going on with recreation, can we do a hire where they can also do groundskeeping if we need them on certain days or weeks?
Like if we have a lot of rain again, we need a lot of mowers.
Yes, yes. Assuming that they are old enough to operate the machinery, yes.
I'll make a motion to, adopt option 1 or approve option 1 organizational chart.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, and motion carries. On to old business C, Court Avenue.
Mayor and Council, I don't see my memo coming through here, but this is another one that was brought up last summer, I believe, with some options, discussing with the neighborhood whether we would vacate the old right-of-way for Court Avenue. City Engineer Mitch Mergen is here tonight to talk about his proposal to improve that right-of-way, not into a street, but into a sort of greenway buffer. Along with that, we know that Juniper Street south of Center Avenue has to be paved. that's still gravel, and so that would bring us up to about $623,500 for the total cost. We do anticipate that juniper portion being included on the new CIP when that is wrapped up. So if this is something that the council wishes to pursue, I would recommend we also add in that buffer with that. To note on the utilities here, note that we're looping the water main from Cedar Street to Juniper Street. That's something that's consistent with our design standards. You don't want to have dead ends on water mains in general. Also add storm sewer inlets on the south side of Juniper Street and routes those west to Elm Street for drainage. And last but not least, we would need to acquire some property on the east side of this project to make that connection to Main Street.
That right away there, that property, can you clarify what's sitting there?
Still fence, yeah, that's a truck trailer, that's within there.
Is that a doable acquisition? Is the property owner amenable to a discussion?
I don't know, Mitch, if you've ever talked to him.
Yeah, I ended up brought it up with Mr. Fett a while ago. And
This
he
was
said
discussed at a meeting that he was here, correct? A couple,
he
like
wasn't
a year
at
ago?
that, he wasn't at
He
that
wasn't
meeting.
here,
It was
okay.
a
The other
couple
property
of
owners
neighbors.
though
Yeah.
were here.
And I happened to run into Mr. Fett just at a function and brought this up that, because I don't know if it was 10 years ago, it kind of came up back then, and he said he was amicable, and he would entertain selling part of that property, that work to do. So he seemed in favor of it.
What are the advantages, Mitch, of doing this now versus waiting just with our current projects that we have going on?
I mean, where it falls on your priority scale is probably, I'd say, lower. I mean, what we've been trying to do is tackle, the gravel roads, which the Juniper Street, it would help to have the storm sewer system that's coming from the west to be able to serve that Juniper area. So if Juniper Street became a gravel road that you wanted to get paved, I'd probably try to do the storm sewer and the water main looping and all that stuff at the same time, and maybe the rest of it. But again, as far as, in my mind, where this falls in our priorities isn't all that high.
So when we heard from these homeowners, kind of between Elm and Main, I don't know if anybody else remembers that when we had some of those homeowners here, there was a lot of concern about drainage, I think between Elm and Cedar up against the tracks. Would this improve any of that drainage? It would.
Yeah. Yep.
You've got inlets throughout, it looks like 2 between Juniper and Cedar, another inlet between Cedar and Elm that would help move that around. And there is an extension right now east of them, if I remember right. I don't know if there's an inlet down there.
Yeah.
Or parallel to the railroad
We put an inlet over there just off of Elm.
Correct.
And that's where we would connect to and extend it through there, so.
Where
yes,
that storm sewer ends, that red line by Elm, that's where the current system ends.
It definitely would help. You could do a smaller project, if you just wanted to take care of the drainage, you could do the storm sewer and just, get things so they drain better through there. If you wanted to address the drainage in that area. Again, the sidewalk connection to me would address any concerns about, kids maybe shortcutting through there, getting them in place to go through that area. The water main looping, I'd say if you're doing work in there, we try to get that done at the same time, but it's not anything that's super pressing. So you could always do a smaller project than what's there, any kind of, whatever improvements you guys want to try to accomplish there.
I'm assuming the bulk of this estimated cost is the infrastructure underground.
It's probably half and half. I would say we were at 600,000 or so. Probably half of it is just to do Juniper Street.
There's about 325, I think, just for the church.
Yeah, because they've got curb and gutter and asphalt street.
And that's just the one block, right?
Yeah.
I believe the Safe Pathways to School SD grant is usually due in February of every year. Can this tie into that at all, going along the railroad tracks, getting?
Probably not.
Especially with our
Main
high
and Elm
school.
we've established as
I think
routes.
I think you could submit that for.
our high school's off of Main, so I feel, you know, if those kids coming from the new development could be coming down Elm, and this is a safe pathway to get across over to Main to get to the highway. Don't look at me like I'm crazy, I think it's a good idea.
I would say we actually included that on planning this point in time. For safe
routes?
Yeah. So I mean, those types of connections, that's what I would do, is try to find a funding source like that to apply for funds on. Cause they are out there, and that's probably a good candidate for those types of funds.
One other question I had, because remembering what those homeowners said, is they felt like they were somewhat landlocked. Does this design allow for a better turnaround for them at the end of Cedar and Juniper with this design?
Not really. We're kind of landlocked, I'd say, there with the amount of right-of-way and space that the city has to be able to make improvements. There's just not enough room to do, I mean, ideally you do a cul-de-sac and some of those, but it's definitely not big enough for that. So then the next you try to go to like a T kind of shaped, hammerhead we call it, and there's really not even enough room to do that either.
I know the phrase landlocked came up at that meeting, but no properties are currently inaccessible.
Right, I mean, they have driveways that they can pull into and back out of, so.
We alleviate, I know at one point we weren't keeping up with the mowing, and one of the landowners was mowing, like that's been remedied.
And you guys put a temporary like drain or something over there too to help with the drainage?
On the very west end, near
Okay.
just where Elm Street, where the railroad meets Elm, there's an inlet there that probably helps right in that specific spot. But it's flat throughout that whole stretch along the railroad. But yeah, if you were gonna do something, I think trying to find a fund to submit under is a good thought. I don't know how soon you'd wanna do any type of drainage improvements, meaning that the neighbors have spoke up over there. You can certainly extend the storm sewer through there and get something done that way too, just help with that.
Are
Definitely
there-
worth pursuing some additional fundage, no question.
Can this be done in phases?
That's
To
what I was
get
wondering.
the drainage piece for the residents?
You could, yeah.
You could, I think you're gonna see those costs
I was gonna say.
blow up. I mean, you could do the underground first year and pave it later.
I personally, I think I'd submit on some of these applications right there, see if you're successful, because then you try to do the whole thing underneath a project like that. And then if you're not successful, then maybe you could look at just doing the drainage or something.
Because we have other gravel streets that are further to the east of this, correct? Or are those on our plan for,
Yes.
is there benefit in tying this block in with those projects?
Yes, again, you're looking at a delay, you know, the earliest we'll see those is 2026. Where we already have one larger project planned for Oriole Drive. Not that we couldn't do Oriole and a larger project in the same year, we did that with Boynton and South Main, for example. So that wouldn't necessarily deter us, but again, the longer you wait, the more those prices are gonna go up.
Do you need a motion just, or a recommendation on how to proceed?
I think just consensus on what, if any, of this you'd like to pursue. And we can come back with a funding package. That would include, I assume, some grant funding or options, whether we
Sure.
write that in with a future project.
How much engineering costs are we looking at to be able to apply for those grants?
For the grants, it's minimal. It's usually
A concept.
a map similar to that.
That's usually all it
cost
costs.
estimate. So probably have the
So-
bulk of it.
so- Isn't that our next steps to see what kind of funding we can get, and then we can see where then that puts us in prioritizing when and what we do?
Yeah, for 2025, well, this is the 2024 application guide. 2025 transportation alternatives is due in October. There might be a different one that we need to look at here, but about $9 million available overall. The project's limited to $600,000 depending on the funding allowance. Minimum is $50,000. local match required is 18.05.
Not to put this on this individual's plate right when they start, but our new park and rec director, I think, is pretty skilled at grant writing and just reviewing grants in general. I think just maybe this summer or later in the fall, if that's something we can have her review, because it's recreation related.
It is. This is something that we work closely with CCOG on. They would write the grant under our agreement with them, but obviously having more eyes on this is helpful.
I'll make a motion to have a proposal put together for funding, including grant funding for this project.
Second.
Okay, did you get that motion, Jen? Okay, so a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thanks, Mitch.
All right, on to 5A, new business, speed limits.
Mayor and council, this item comes at the request of Mayor Bergen. Speed limits are often a topic of discussion around town. I don't need to read through all of this, but one of the things that we get comments on is the 20 versus 15 versus 25 mile an hour speed zones that are in statute and what we have. So right now, we've got what SDL says is 25 unless otherwise marked, and then 15 in school zones unless otherwise marked. I did come across some recent action. Back in 2017, the speed limit was reduced on Boynton Avenue from 30 to 20. It established West First as a 20 mile an hour zone from Main Street to Cleveland Avenue. My understanding was that Boynton was changed due to the dangerous conditions along Boynton. Obviously, it looks very different today than it did back then. West First had a speed limit that varied from 15 to 25 depending on where you were at, so they just made it 20 all the way for that little over half mile. With respect to citations, you do track and report that every month, and I do have a chart in here for 2024. Approximately 26% of stops for speeding result in a citation, about 74% are issued a warning. So before proceeding with any specific recommendations, I'd welcome council input on what exactly you'd like to study with respect to traffic here. We can look at specific streets or intersections. I think signage is something we can look at. And if this is a larger project, we may wish to talk with Stockwell about what a larger traffic study would look like. I don't know if you have a rough idea of what that would be.
I mean, for local roads and side of street speed limits, we've never had to do that before. I don't think it's all that common to have an engineer come in and help you set those speed limits. I can certainly offer my thoughts on any roads in town, but yeah, I think a study is probably a bit much. I don't think you need to go that route. But.
I think I'd also like to hear from Will, just on your take, I guess, on speed limits in those areas, and if you feel like, are there safety issues? Do you prefer consistency of one speed limit on that road?
Is it confusing, like our residents don't know what the speed limit is? I don't know.
You want me to talk right now?
Yeah,
Come on.
if you're willing.
Absolutely.
Always willing, right?
Thank you, Mitch.
Yeah.
So as far as the speed limits, it's nice to be able to have a general consensus speed limit. I remember the days of many different speed limits on many different roads. So to have it consistent is great. Safety concerns, I think with moving the stop sign in Boynton, I know a lot of people really did not like that, but it has cut down our accidents up there. I can't tell you when the last accident we had at that intersection was. So that's, to me, that's tremendous. As far as the speed limit goes, 25 on that road is very fair. The average traffic that we clock on that road, from my experience, is between 25 and 35 miles an hour. Some of the posted limits on Main Street, I know that was brought up in your memo. I do feel pretty strongly about keeping it at 15. The only reason why I say that from a safety aspect is because we do have center parking. And from somebody who has almost hit people from just walking out into the road from center parking, it can happen to anybody. It can happen to a kid. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself coming into City Hall. So 15 seems like a reasonable amount for the congested area there. Mark and I talked a little bit about this as far as the 25 change. We're not opposed to that at all. I mean, we have several streets in town that are not posted, so technically by state statute, they are 25. To get consistent, put them all at 25, well, you made my life a lot easier. I don't have to think about it as much. My guys definitely patrol in the aspect of, now we have to remember which streets are actually posted, which ones are not. And sometimes for us, that can be confusing, especially like with our night shift. Night shift, as you know, some of our roads aren't very well lit as well. So, do I think there's definitely some room to have a conversation about? Absolutely. There's some aspects from the PD side that, you know, I already discussed some of them with Nate. I'd like to offer my input, depending on what the guidance from the council is. I don't think that there's a whole lot of safety concerns going to 25, as long as we anticipate what we're getting into with that as well. I mean, I don't want to drag this out. So I'd be more than happy to put something together for council if that's the direction you'd like us to go, and we could get as much detail into that as possible and work with Nate on it.
Just on a quick note, Bill, I think you had brought up previously Highway 17 as well.
Yes.
And whether that should be adjusted. I mean, that's not ours, but we can certainly make a request if it's warranted.
Right, I think 35 on Highway 17 through our community makes more sense than 45. People pulling off of the road onto 17, it gets on you in a hurry at 45.
I agree.
I think
Especially
35
with
is,
the recreation pathway there too. It is very fast for how close you are to pedestrians.
44 and 17 are both set by the state. I know we had some discussions with them over our Main Street area.
And the county. North of Casey's, it's the county, so we have to get both jurisdictions to
Right.
agree, but
Right at that intersection?
that's where it
Okay.
takes us. Yeah.
Line 4, or you said
Boynton.
Boynton.
Boynton,
Okay.
you know. So south of Boynton is state jurisdiction, north is county jurisdiction.
You said some of the streets aren't posted. When this memo first came out, I was like, there's a street that I drive on quite frequently that has a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit just in front of like a house. And it's well, right over here, yeah. First Avenue, right on the back side of, like, right by the alley, it turns to 15 miles an hour right before the stop sign. That's ridiculous. And then over on 4th, I actually paid attention. I had said in my memo it was 3rd, but it's on 4th Avenue in front of, I think it's Fudness's house. From like the house right before Fudness on the corner
Main
there.
Street.
No, 4th Avenue, it's when you're going west, right before
Academy.
Elm. It turns to 15 miles an hour. I have no idea why.
My guess is that there used to be a daycare there. My
Yeah,
guess
but
is
I
that's
think
why.
it's been there longer than Michelle had a daycare there
My,
Different daycare,
previously.
different daycare.
Okay.
I was
Yeah,
under
Kim
the
Rowe.
impression
Kim
that
Rowe.
Yeah.
that block before
Yeah.
Main, so you've got Main and then a block either way of it was 15 and then it was 20 after that because you had that one block from Main to the east or west and that was all 15 and
Yeah.
then it went to 20.
And
I would-
we had,
Jen is in a hurry to get to work every morning.
Yeah.
Well, and then
Often caught speeding.
Yeah, that's where my intention, and I just have been thinking about it lately, it's like, it's just confusing.
Consistency is what we're
Yeah.
looking for.
and I would also say, it's the same when you're going north on Main too. I understand the center parking, makes complete sense, but in front of the laundromat and stuff there, it's 15 miles an hour there too, I
Right.
think. Past the railroad tracks.
it's
I
got
catch,
picked up
I
for that
catch myself going over 15
Yeah.
quite often, and
It's-
same with Boynton, I catch myself going 22 or 23, so I think it completely makes sense to kind of raise that one for sure, but.
And as some, I mean, most of the people that, you know, most of you guys have lived here forever, you know that we used to turn around right up there by the laundromat. And that's where our whip was. So naturally it stayed 15 past railroad tracks because they wanted to keep traffic slow. that's where the flow of traffic was going. They were gonna be turning in front of oncoming traffic. But if you notice when they remarked it, they put double solid lines all the way up to the railroad's property. So that's no longer a U-turn. Now, however, to get somebody who's lived here for 50 years to understand that, we
We still see
understand.
U-turns right in front of the sign.
Yeah, we understand that, and, you know, they've tried to do some things to upgrade that particular area to make it a little bit safer with the, especially taking that U-turn away from people, but, I agree, the 15-mile-an-hour zone, once you've left Main Street and got through First, there's no legitimate reason at that point to keep it to a 15. Because we don't have a lot of the problems like we used to where traffic was heavily in that area turning around.
Well, and it's like, I mean, if you're approaching the stop sign, you're slowing down anyways. But it's like, and even coming off of a turn or another stop sign, I mean, do you really need to have it posted 15 miles an hour?
Right.
I don't know.
I like getting Chief Erickson and Mark's feedback on this and where we want to go with it. I think that'll really help us round this out.
We did,
It sounds to me like we're just looking for consistency and predictability.
Yep.
Right, that's what we're.
And, move
Ease
from
of
20 to
enforcement.
25.
Safety, obviously.
Safety.
Absolutely.
And then can we also move forward with Highway 17? I don't know if we have to put some type of a proposal together. I mean, that's probably since the last time it was reviewed, we didn't have the rec path there.
Well, I know they dropped it down from 65 to 55 north of D&D 2 years ago.
yeah,
That
when
was a
they
good
put up
move.
the signs about all the accidents that were happening about the.
And the 4-H
Correct.
Yeah.
And
changed it.
if we're paying attention, that intersection at the Klondike is being studied for a roundabout,
I
so,
think they
Oh, it is.
approved it. They approved it for 2026.
okay.
I
So,
saw that in the
you know,
commissioner's notes.
I think everybody acknowledges that there's a lot more traffic there now than there was even 4 years ago. And that's just that'll continue to grow.
I'm shocked it's not 35, because like in Bell Rapids, all of our highways going in and out are all 35. At that point, the DOT looks at how many access points there are along it, and that's really what will dictate your speed.
You know,
I think
access
it'd be
points
more
and
along the
stuff.
lines that the conversation's never been had.
Okay.
We just always just allowed it to be what it is, and since they widened Highway 17, I mean, we see a lot less accidents out there anyway, but their speeds, yeah.
So is that gonna be confusing if we pursue that 35 on 17, but then the other highway is 45 and then 30?
I would be not opposed to keep 30 on the minute you turn off from 17 onto 44, all the way out of town.
Sure.
I would not be opposed to that
Yeah.
one bit, because one, we have quite a heavy traffic flow of foot traffic on that bike path, plus kids going out to our bridge. During the school year, we have a heavy traffic flow of children. And I don't know how many times I've sat over there over my time and watched semi-trucks just hammering the brakes, trying to get slowed down, because like with all kids, they don't always pay attention to what's coming down the road.
Well, and yet that's a really bad corner.
It is.
Just past the bridge as well.
Yep.
Yes.
So is that something you can pursue a conversation with the DOT then?
Nate would actually be the
Nate,
talking
We'll make
point,
it happen.
but yeah,
Okay.
I could definitely be assistance to.
But I think consistency in our town of Lennox is very helpful, so whatever, both highways, yeah.
We'll come back with a recommendation on what we can do with our jurisdiction, and then a recommended request from DOT and county.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have an action, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, award ash tree removal project, Mitch?
Okay, thank you. We've got in your packet a recommendation to award the ash tree removal project. We opened bids last week, and we had 4 bidders. You can see them summarized in our correspondence, but Complete Tree Service was the low bid on the project at $58,720. We had estimated the project at about $70,000 based off of some recent projects at Sioux Falls had bid out that are similar in nature. So it's pretty straightforward. I guess we would recommend award to that low bidder. I did talk to them briefly about their schedule. They said that they would, it was March they thought they'd start. I guess they won't be here long, and it sounded like it was gonna be a few weeks and nobody done it out here, so. He was gonna try to get the park ones out first, that's what the contract calls for.
Whether he does the whole project all in one swath or comes back for the second phase, he wasn't quite decided on yet. But
And that March timeline still falls, I know there's like a perfect time to cut them down, that still falls within
yeah,
that
it's,
window.
it's actually, Memorial Day to Labor Day is when you try to have, outside of that, you wanna get either ahead or after that season, just to help so that the board doesn't spread, because that's, it can spread easier. But yeah, we shouldn't have any issue there.
In your conversations with Complete Tree Service, did you discuss at all, like if residents have interest in kind of tagging
Yes.
on while they have their,
There you go.
equipment here?
Yep, and he said just to provide them his contact information,
Okay.
and he'll quote it with all the year.
I'm wondering if we can do some type of social media push, or when we do mailers that says, if you're interested, here's a company coming to town, but you need to, you know, just the process for residents to go through.
And what's nice about these guys is they were the tree removal contractor on the Central Basin project. So all those trees that came out of that project was these guys. So they're familiar, we're familiar with them that way, so they did a good job there.
We'll send something out.
Motion to award contract to low bidder Complete Tree Service.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. We have another motion on that memo too. To execute notice of award and return to Stockwell office.
So moved.
Yep, a motion for that
Second.
and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. That's it, I think, this evening. Otherwise, I look for a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Grab some hats, guys, if you.
Yeah.
Grab some shopping.
Use like tree.
Well,